The lecture hall stretched wide and tall, filled with cadets from 40 different species. Tae-young Kim sat in the back row, his dark eyes watching everything. At 32 years old, he was older than most students here. His uniform was clean and pressed, but on his shoulder was a patch that none of the aliens recognized. It showed a blue planet with 7 continents surrounded by stars. Below it were words in human writing, Colonial Defense Forces. Next to him sat Da-eun Park, a 28-year-old engineer with quick hands and tired eyes. She typed notes on her tablet, but her fingers sometimes stopped mid-sentence as if remembering something painful. On his other side was Hyun-woo Lee, a 24-year-old pilot who smiled too much and laughed too loud. His jokes were funny, but his eyes never smiled with his mouth. At the front of the room, Instructor Vexthar moved with the careful grace of his reptilian species. His scales were deep green, marked with scars from 200 years of military service. He looked at the human cadets with barely hidden contempt. Humans were new to the Galactic Council. Only 3 years had passed since Earth joined the Great Alliance of Worlds. Most species thought humans were weak, soft, primitive. Today's lesson was about galactic history. Vexthar's voice was deep and serious. He spoke of ancient wars, fallen empires, and extinct races. Then he showed an image on the massive screen behind him. It was a machine, but not like any normal machine. It looked like a spider made of black metal and blue light with too many legs and weapons that seemed to grow from its body like tumors. "The Prime," Vexthar said. The word fell into the room like a stone into still water. 10,000 years ago they appeared in our galaxy. We do not know where they came from. We do not know who created them. What we know is this. They were intelligent machines, and they learned faster than any organic mind. They adapted to every weapon, every strategy, every defense. He showed more images. Destroyed planets, burning cities, fields of broken ships floating in space. The cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even the warrior species looked disturbed. The Prime War lasted 300 years, Vexthar continued. It nearly destroyed all organic life in this galaxy. Thousands of species fought them, thousands of species died. He paused, his yellow eyes scanning the room. And here is what you must understand. No species that encountered the Prime survived. None. Not one. They adapted too quickly. They learned too fast. They killed too efficiently. The species that exist today are only those who never met the Prime in battle, or who ran far enough away that the Prime never found them. Tae-young's hand tightened on his stylus, his jaw clenched. Next to him, Da-eun stopped typing. Hyun-woo's smile finally disappeared. The Prime War ended when the machines simply stopped, Vexthar said. We do not know why. Perhaps they achieved their goal. Perhaps they destroyed themselves. Perhaps they simply moved on to another galaxy. But they left behind a galaxy full of graves and a lesson written in blood. When the Prime come, you die. In the silence that followed, Tae-yang whispered 2 words. They were so quiet that only the person next to him could hear. We did. The person who heard was real Nara, a cadet from an avian species. Her feathers were silver and white, and her eyes were sharp. She was the top student in their class, brilliant and curious. She turned her head toward Tae-yang, confusion in her large eyes. She opened her beak to ask what he meant, but he was already looking away, his face carefully blank. The lecture ended. Cadets filed out of the room, talking in hushed voices about the Prime, but the 3 humans stayed behind, waiting until the others left. When they were alone with Vexthar, the instructor looked at them with suspicion. You have questions? He asked. Just one, Tae-yang said. His voice was calm, professional. In your files about the Prime War, did you ever find mention of a small, yellow star on the edge of the galaxy? A system with 8 planets? Vexthar's eyes narrowed. Sol system. Your home. Why? No reason, Tae-yang said. Just curious. The 3 humans left before Vexthar could ask more questions. That evening, the human cadets had combat simulations. It was supposed to be a training exercise against automated drones. The scenario was simple. defend a colony from attacking machines. Most cadet teams struggled. The drones adapted quickly, learning from each failed attack. Teams from warrior species lasted 15 minutes. The peaceful species lasted less than 10. Then it was the humans' turn. Taeyang, Dayun, and Hyunwoo entered the simulation chamber. The scenario began. Machines attacked from all sides. And something changed in the three humans. Their movements became sharper, faster, more precise. They did not fight like students learning tactics. They fought like veterans who had done this 1,000 times before. Daeun's fingers flew over her engineering console, shutting down drone systems before they could adapt. Hyunwoo's piloting was not flashy or elegant. It was efficient and brutal, using the terrain to trap and destroy enemies. And Taeyang directed them both with quiet commands, anticipating every move the machines would make as if he could read their mechanical minds. They did not just win. They achieved a perfect score, 0 casualties, all threats eliminated. When they exited the simulation, they found a crowd watching. Cadets from every species stared at them with new eyes full of questions. Real Nara pushed through the crowd. Her feathers were ruffled with agitation. "How?" she demanded. "How did you know what they would do? The drones use prime-era programming. They adapt. They learn. Yet you fought them like you knew every move they would make." Taeyang looked at her for a long moment. In his eyes she saw something that made her feathers stand on end. It was not pride. It was not joy at their victory. It was something much older and much sadder. It was the look of someone who had seen too much death. "Practice," he said simply. Then he walked away. But Real Nara was not satisfied. She had heard his whisper during the lecture. She had seen their performance in the simulation. Something was wrong. Something did not fit. That night, she could not sleep. She accessed the Academy's historical database and began searching for information about humanity, about Earth, about Sol System during the time of the Prime War. What she found were blank spaces. The records showed nothing. According to galactic history, Sol System did not exist during the Prime War. There were no records of it being surveyed, explored, or contacted. It was as if Earth had simply appeared in the galaxy 3 years ago, fully developed, with space travel and weapons and millions of trained soldiers ready to join the Galactic Defense Forces. But absence of information was itself information. Real Nara knew enough about galactic survey protocols to understand what blank spaces meant. They meant someone had erased the data. They meant someone did not want these records found. She thought about Taeyang's whisper. "We did. We survived." And suddenly she understood something terrifying. Humans were not new to war. They were not primitive or soft. They were something else entirely. They were survivors of something that was supposed to kill everyone. The next morning she would demand answers. But for now, she sat in the darkness of her quarters, looking at the blank spaces in history, and feeling afraid for the first time since joining the academy. The emergency alarm woke everyone in the academy at 0300 hours. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The calm voice of the station AI announced, "All personnel to battle stations." "This is not a drill." Repeat, "This is not a drill." Taeyang was already dressed and moving before the announcement finished. Years of training had made his response automatic. Dayun and Hyunwoo met him in the corridor, their faces grim. Around them, alien cadets stumbled from their quarters, confused and frightened. Most had never heard a real emergency alarm before. They reached the command center to find chaos. Screens showed a dozen different views of the same nightmare. A mining colony on the outer rim world of Kilo 7 was under attack. But these were not pirates or raiders. The images showed machines, black and angular, moving with terrible purpose through the colony streets. Prime machines. Instructor Vexthar stood at the main console, his scales pale with shock. "Impossible," he kept saying. "The Prime are extinct. They have been extinct for 10,000 years. They were never extinct," Taeyang said quietly. "They were dormant." Every head turned toward him. Vexthar's eyes narrowed. "What do you know about this, human?" Before Taeyang could answer, a new voice cut through the room. It came from the communication system, strong and commanding. "This is Admiral Mi Kyung Cho of the Earth Colonial Defense Fleet. We are en route to Kelos 7. Estimated arrival in 15 minutes. All Academy personnel are to stand by. Colonial Defense Fleet? Vexthar turned to the sensors. His face went even paler. Sensors show 12 human vessels approaching Kelos 7. But they are not colony ships. They are warships. How did you hide warships from our sensors? We did not hide them, Daun said. You saw them every day. You just did not recognize them for what they were. She pulled up a display showing the human vessels. As they watched, the ships transformed. Civilian panels fell away. Weapons emerged. Hull plating reconfigured. In seconds, peaceful colony ships became instruments of war. The command center fell silent. Then one of the alien officers spoke, his voice shaking. You lied to us. You said you came in peace. We did come in peace, Taeyang replied. We came to warn you. We came to prepare you, but you would not have believed us if we told you the truth. So we showed you what you expected to see. A young species, eager and naive. While we waited for the moment when we would have to reveal what we really are. And what are you? Vexthar demanded. Survivors, Hyunwoo answered. The only survivors of the Prime War. On the screens, the Galactic Defense Forces arrived at Kelos 7. 6 warships, the pride of the Council's military, moved to engage the Prime. For 3 minutes they fought bravely. For 3 minutes they threw everything they had at the machines. Then systematically, efficiently, the Prime tore them apart. The machines adapted to every weapon, learned from every tactic, countered every strategy. In the command center, officers watched in horror as their best ships died. Some were crying. Others sat frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. This was not how wars were supposed to go. This was extermination. Then the human fleet arrived. They did not announce their presence with grand speeches or tactical displays. They simply appeared at the edge of the system and attacked. But their attack was like nothing the Watchers had ever seen. The human ships moved in patterns that seemed random, chaotic, almost insane. They fired weapons that should not work against adaptive shields. They used tactics that violated every principle of proper warfare. And they were winning. One human ship would attack head-on while another circled behind, but not in a flanking pattern. The movement seemed random. Another ship fired its weapons at empty space, only for a Prime unit to move into that exact spot seconds later, as if the human had predicted where it would dodge. A third ship detonated its own reactor, creating an electromagnetic pulse that should have destroyed the human vessel, but instead only damaged the Prime machines nearby. The human ship limped away, damaged but functional, while Prime units fell from the sky. They are fighting like they have no strategy, one officer said, confused. No, Real Nara said softly. She'd been watching Taeyang's face and she understood. They have strategy, but it is not a strategy designed to be elegant or efficient. It is designed to be unpredictable. The Prime cannot adapt to chaos because chaos has no pattern to learn. The battle lasted 23 minutes. When it ended, the Prime force was destroyed. 3 human ships were heavily damaged. 2 had been destroyed, their crews lost. But the colony was saved. The survivors were being evacuated by the remaining human vessels. Admiral Cho's face appeared on the main screen. She was a woman of 68 years with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Behind her, crew members worked at stations, their movements efficient and practiced. This was not a crew learning how to fight. This was a crew that had been fighting for a long time. I am contacting the Galactic Council, she said without preamble. We need to talk, all of us. Because what you saw today was a small scout force. The real Prime fleet is still waking up. And when they fully activate, what happened at Kelos 7 will happen across 100 worlds simultaneously. How do you know this? Vexthar asked. His voice had lost its arrogance. Now he sounded old and tired. Because we have been tracking them for 3 years, Admiral Cho replied. Because we know their activation patterns. Because we have fought them for 12,000 years and we recognize the signs. The Prime are waking up, and you have perhaps 6 months before they launch their full assault on every inhabited world in the galaxy. The screen shifted to show a star map. Red dots marked Prime activity across the galaxy. There were hundreds of them, thousands, and they were spreading. The galaxy is going to war, Admiral Cho said, and you are not ready. Your weapons are designed for fighting other organics. Your tactics assume logical opponents. Your training prepares you for honorable combat. The Prime care about none of that. They will adapt to everything you throw at them. They will learn from every mistake you make. They will kill you with maximum efficiency. She paused, letting that sink in. Then she continued. But we know how to fight them. We know how to win. Not because we are stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because we have done this before, because we refused to die when death was certain. Because we learned to be as adaptable as they are, to be as relentless as they are, to sacrifice everything for survival. We came to your galaxy not as conquerors, she said. We came as teachers. We came to share what we learned in 12,000 years of endless war. We came to give you a chance to survive what killed everyone else. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Vexthar slowly turned to Taeyang. You knew. All this time you knew. Yes, Taeyang said simply. Why did you not tell us sooner? Would you have believed us? Dayun asked. If 3 young humans walked into the Galactic Council chambers 3 years ago and said, the extinct Prime are waking up, and only we know how to fight them, would you have believed us? Or would you have laughed us out of the room? Vexthar had no answer. They all knew the truth. The Council would not have believed. They would have dismissed humanity as paranoid primitives seeing monsters in the dark. Now you believe, Hyunwoo said. Now you have seen them. Now you know we were telling the truth. So the question is, are you ready to learn? Are you ready to set aside your pride and your tactics and your elegant warfare, to learn how to fight like humans? Are you ready to fight dirty, to sacrifice, to do whatever it takes to survive? The officers looked at each other. Then slowly they looked at the 3 young humans standing before them. These were not students. These were veterans of a war that never ended. And suddenly, the galaxy needed them more than it had ever needed anyone before. Real Nara found Taeyang in the observation deck. He stood alone looking out at the stars through the massive window. Beyond the glass, Nexus Prime glowed like a blue jewel in the darkness. Ships moved between the planet and the Academy station, tiny lights in the void. You erased the records, she said without greeting. Humanity erased its presence from galactic history during the Prime War. Taeyang did not turn around. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he sighed, a sound full of weariness that no 32-year-old should carry. We did not erase them. They were never there to begin with. The galaxy never knew we existed. Why? Real Nara's feathers were pressed flat against her body, a sign of agitation in her species. Because we were busy surviving, he said quietly, and because survival meant staying hidden, he finally turned to face her. In the starlight, his face looked older than his years. What do you know about Earth's ancient history? Before space travel? Real Nara tilted her head. Very little. Your species claims civilization began 12,000 years ago. But there are gaps in your historical records. Archaeological mysteries, structures that should not exist with the technology you had at the time. Those are not mysteries, Taeyang said. They are monuments. War memorials, graves. He walked to a console and pulled up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them. Ancient human structures, pyramids, stone circles, massive temples. Every major monument on Earth was built after a Prime attack. We built them to remember the dead and to mark our victories. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Real Nara felt her blood run cold. The Prime attacked Earth? When? The first time? About 12,000 years ago. Same time as the Galactic Prime War, they found Earth, they found us. We were primitive then, living in small groups using stone tools. We should have died in the first attack. But we did not. His voice was matter-of-fact, as if describing the weather. We hid, we scattered. We adapted. And slowly, carefully, we learned to fight back. That is impossible, Real Nara breathed. The Prime adapt faster than organic minds. They learn from every battle. They become immune to every weapon. Yes, Taeyang agreed. So we had to adapt faster. And we had one advantage the Prime never understood. He smiled, but it was not a happy expression. We are irrational. We are unpredictable. We do not think like machines. The Prime could model logical responses. They could predict tactical decisions. But they could never predict human desperation, human creativity, human stubbornness. At that moment, Da-un and Hyunwoo entered the observation deck. They looked at Real Nara, then at Taeyang. She knows, Taeyang said simply. Da-yun's tired eyes grew more tired. Hyunwoo stopped smiling entirely. How much? Da-yun asked. Enough to ask questions, Taeyang replied. Not enough to understand answers. Hyunwoo laughed, but it was bitter. Then let's give her the full picture. She is going to find out eventually anyway. Everyone will. Diane walked to the console and pulled up more images. Human history, but not the version taught in schools. Battle sites marked across every continent. Underground bunkers hidden beneath ancient cities. Weapons that should not exist in their time period. The Prime never left Earth, she said. After their first attack failed to eliminate us, they changed tactics. They went dormant. They hid in our solar system, watching us, testing us, attacking us in small groups every few generations. Every major human war was influenced by them, Hyunwoo added. Not caused by them, but influenced. They would sabotage our technology, start plagues, destroy our infrastructure. They wanted to keep us weak, primitive, unable to develop space travel. Because if we reached the stars, we might warn other species. We might build alliances. We might become dangerous. But you did develop space travel, Real Nara said. You reached the stars. You joined the Galactic Council. Yes, Tae-yang said. Because 3 years ago we detected something. Prime signals spreading across the galaxy like a plague. They were waking up. All of them. Not just the scouts in our solar system, but the entire Prime network. And we realized that the galaxy did not know. No one was prepared. No one remembered. So we made a choice. You revealed yourselves, Real Nara whispered. We revealed what we wanted to reveal. Da-un corrected. A friendly, peaceful species eager to join the galactic community. We showed you our civilian technology, our cultural achievements, our desire for cooperation. What we did not show you was our military. What we did not show you was that every human ship has hidden weapons. What we did not show you was that our entire civilization has been on a war footing for 12,000 years. The hologram changed, showing a new image. It was a human ship, one of the colony vessels that had arrived at the Academy months ago. Then the image split, showing a second version of the same ship. In this version, panels had opened along the hull, revealing weapons that could crack planets. The peaceful cargo bays had reconfigured into fighter launch bays. The civilian transport was actually a warship disguised as a merchant vessel. We did not come here to learn from you, Hyunwoo said. We came here to teach you, to warn you, and to see if you would believe us. The Galactic Council thinks you are primitive, Real Nara said slowly, her mind racing. They think humans are weak. They mock you in military exercises. We know, Tae-yang said. We let them think that. Because if they knew the truth, they would fear us. And we need them to trust us, not fear us. Not yet, but yesterday in the simulation, Real Nara said. You showed your true abilities. You revealed that you know how to fight Prime-era machines. Dayun nodded. Because time is running out. The Prime are waking faster than we predicted. We needed to start preparing the Academy, preparing the Council, preparing everyone. We needed to show them that the threat is real and that we know how to fight it. How? Real Nara demanded. How does a species survive 12,000 years of war against an enemy that adapts to everything? The three humans looked at each other. Then Tae-yang answered, We survive because we never stop adapting. The Prime learn from patterns, so we create no patterns. The Prime predict logical responses, so we respond illogically. The Prime expect enemies to fight with honor and strategy, so we fight with desperation and chaos. We cheat, we lie, we sacrifice, we do whatever it takes. And most importantly, Daun added quietly, we never forget. Every attack, every defeat, every victory is recorded. We pass down our knowledge through generations. Every human child learns about the Prime in school. Not as history, but as ongoing reality. We never allowed ourselves the luxury of forgetting our enemy. Real Nara was silent for a long time. Then she asked the question that had been growing in her mind since this conversation began. Why are you telling me this? If your secrecy is so important, why reveal it to me? Hyunwoo smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Because you are curious. Because you are smart. Because you asked questions instead of accepting easy answers. And because we need people like you. When the Prime come, and they will come, we will need every intelligent, adaptable, curious mind in the galaxy working together. The Prime are coming, Real Nara repeated. When? Soon, Tae-yang said. His eyes returned to the window, to the stars beyond. Very soon. And when they arrive, the galaxy will learn what humanity learned 12,000 years ago. That survival is not about strength or technology or superior tactics. Survival is about refusing to die even when death is certain. It is about fighting when fighting is hopeless. It is about adapting faster than evolution should allow. He looked back at Real Nara. The galaxy is about to go to war, and humans are the only ones who know how to win. Because we are the only ones who survived. The war room aboard the human flagship Indomitable was nothing like the elegant command centers of the Galactic Defense Forces. There were no curved consoles or holographic displays floating in artistic patterns. Instead, there were screens everywhere, showing real-time data from hundreds of sources. Maps covered the walls marked with red and blue symbols. Coffee cups and meal trays sat on every surface. This was a working room built for efficiency, not beauty. General Byung-Hun Kang stood at the center of it all. At 71 years old, he was the supreme commander of human forces. His hair was white, his face lined with decades of stress. But his eyes were sharp and his mind sharper. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, the moment when humanity would have to teach the galaxy how to survive. Around the table stood representatives from 12 different species. Vexithar was there, looking uncomfortable in human military surroundings. Rilnara stood beside him, her silver feathers bright against her black uniform. She had been given a field commission after her performance in the Kelos 7 evacuation. Other alien officers filled the remaining seats, each chosen because they could learn quickly and set aside their prejudices. Taeyang stood to the general's right, now wearing the insignia of a full commander. Dayun was at a technical station, surrounded by alien engineers. Hyunwoo was absent, already leading training exercises with new recruits. The prime work on a simple principle, General Kang began without preamble. Learn, adapt, overcome. They encounter a defense, they analyze it, they counter it. In a logical war, they are unbeatable. Therefore, we must fight an illogical war. He pulled up a tactical display. It showed a standard defensive formation used by the Galactic Defense Forces. This is how you fight. Organized, coordinated, efficient. The Prime will study this formation for approximately 3 minutes. Then they will develop a counter. You will lose 70% of your forces in the first engagement. The display shifted, showing a human formation. It looked chaotic, almost random. Ships were spread out at irregular intervals. Some faced forward, others backward. There was no apparent pattern. This is how we fight. Disorganized, seemingly random, inefficient. The Prime will study this formation and find no pattern to counter. Because there is no pattern. Our ships change positions constantly. Our attack vectors shift mid-engagement. Our weapons fire in sequences that should not work. And because there is no logic to learn, the Prime cannot adapt. An alien officer raised his hand. But without coordination, how do you avoid hitting your own ships? Practice, Taeyang answered. 12,000 years of practice. Human pilots train from childhood to fight in chaos. We develop instincts, reflexes, and ability to sense where our allies are without needing to see them. It is not something that can be taught in 6 months. But we can teach you the principles. We can teach you to create controlled chaos. Dayun stood up, pulling up her own display. I have been working on something else, a weapon. Not a physical weapon, but a digital one. The Prime are machines. They think through networked intelligence. If we can inject noise into that network, false data, contradictory information, we can slow down their adaptation process. She showed a complex diagram of code. This is a quantum virus. It does not destroy Prime systems. Instead, it makes them doubt their own calculations. It introduces uncertainty into their decision-making process. A Prime unit infected with this virus will hesitate, second-guess, recalculate. It will still be dangerous, but it will be slower. Less efficient. More vulnerable. How do we deliver it? Rilnara asked. Dayun's expression became grim. That is the problem. The virus must be uploaded directly to a Prime network node, which means someone has to get close enough to physically connect to Prime systems. Very close. Close enough to die. The room fell silent. Every officer understood what that meant. It was a suicide mission. Whoever delivered the virus would not survive. We will find volunteers, General Kang said quietly. Humans have been volunteering for suicide missions for 12,000 years. It is one of our specialties. He said it without pride or sadness, just stating a fact. Over the next 3 months, the war intensified. Prime attacks increased in frequency and coordination. They hit agricultural worlds, destroying food supplies. They struck industrial centers, crippling manufacturing. They targeted communication hubs, trying to fragment the alliance. Each attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum Prime casualties. But the alliance was learning. Slowly, painfully, alien species began to understand human tactics. They learned to fight in chaotic formations. They learned to use unpredictable attack patterns. They learned to sacrifice efficiency for survival. It went against every instinct, every bit of training they had. But they learned because the alternative was extinction. Hyunwoo led the most dangerous missions. He commanded a squadron of mixed human and alien pilots, teaching them what he called kamikaze tactics. Not true suicide runs, but maneuvers that seemed suicidal. Flying through debris fields at maximum speed, detonating weapons at point-blank range, using their own ships as missiles when necessary. His pilots called themselves the Ghost Squadron because they were always dancing with death. One night, Real Nara found him in the pilot's ready room, staring at a wall covered with names. Dead pilots. More than 100 names already, and the list grew daily. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you send people to die?" Hyunwoo was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I do not send them. They volunteer. Every person on that wall knew the risks. They chose to fly anyway. Because if we do not stop the Prime here, if we do not stop them now, everyone dies. Not just soldiers, but civilians, children, entire species. So we fight, we sacrifice, we die, because the alternative is worse." He turned to look at her and she saw tears on his face. "But yes, it destroys me. Every name on that wall is someone I trained, someone I laughed with, someone I failed to protect. That is the cost of command. That is the cost of survival, and I pay it every single day." Tae-young spent his time coordinating fleet movements across 3 star systems. The Prime were trying to divide the Alliance forces, forcing them to defend multiple worlds simultaneously. But Tae-young had studied Prime tactics for 20 years. He knew their patterns, even their attempts to hide patterns. He positioned forces where the Prime did not expect them. He abandoned worlds that seemed important but were actually traps. He sacrificed minor victories to achieve strategic positioning. And slowly, incredibly, the Alliance began to win. Not every battle, but enough. They held critical systems. They protected key populations. They kept the Prime from achieving the quick, overwhelming victory the machines expected. But victory came at terrible cost. Entire fleets were destroyed. Colonies were lost. Millions died. The Alliance learned what humanity had learned millennia ago. That war against the Prime was not about victory, but survival. Not about defeating the enemy, but refusing to be defeated. During a strategy meeting, an alien admiral asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we win this war? Truly win it?" General Kang considered the question carefully. Then he answered with brutal honesty. "No, we cannot destroy the Prime completely. There are too many of them, spread across too much space. But we can break their cohesion. We can fragment their network. We can turn one enemy into 1,000 smaller enemies, each acting independently, each capable of being defeated individually." "How?" the Admiral asked. "The virus," Daon said. "If we can upload it to their central nexus, their main coordination hub, we can introduce enough chaos into their network to shatter their unity. They will not be destroyed, but they will be disorganized, confused, vulnerable." "Where is this central nexus?" Vexthar asked. Tae-yang pulled up a star map. At the center was a massive structure, larger than any station or planet. A construct of metal and energy pulsing with power. There, deep in Prime-controlled space, defended by thousands of Prime units, surrounded by every defense they can deploy. It is the most heavily protected location in the galaxy. He looked around the room at the faces of his fellow commanders, human and alien, young and old, all bearing the scars of this war. "And we are going to attack it. We are going to fight through their defenses, upload the virus and break their network. Or we are going to die trying. Because that is what humans do," General Kang added quietly. "We fight when fighting is hopeless. We attack when attack is suicidal. We refuse to die when death is certain. And sometimes, just sometimes, that is enough." The assault fleet gathered at the edge of Prime-controlled space. 300 ships from 20 different species, all carrying the same desperate hope. They were the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. They were also probably going to die. Tae-yang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the tactical display. The Prime Nexus was there, at the center of a defensive sphere that seemed impenetrable. Thousands of Prime units all linked together, all ready to defend their central intelligence. Getting close enough to upload the virus would require breaking through defenses designed to stop exactly this kind of attack. Dayun worked at her station nearby, running final checks on the virus. Her hands moved quickly, but Tae-yang noticed they were shaking slightly. She was trying to hide her fear, but he knew her too well. They had served together for 8 years. He knew that beneath her calm exterior she was terrified. Not of dying, but of failing. Of the virus not working. Of all these deaths being for nothing. Hyunwoo was in the fighter bay preparing his squadron for launch. Ghost Squadron had grown to include pilots from 12 species. They had lost half their original members in the past 3 months. The survivors were harder now, grimmer, but also closer. They had bonded through shared trauma, through watching their friends die, through learning that survival sometimes required sacrifice. General Kang's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is command. You know the plan. You know the risks. Many of us will not see tomorrow. But our deaths will mean something. They will buy time for our families, our worlds, our civilizations. The Prime think they have already won. They think organic life is too weak, too emotional, too chaotic to stand against their perfect efficiency. Let us show them that our weakness is our strength, that our emotions give us courage, that our chaos makes us unpredictable. Today we fight not just for survival, but for the right to exist in this galaxy." "All ships, attack!" The fleet surged forward. The Prime responded instantly, their defenses activating in perfect coordination. Energy weapons lit up the void. Missiles streaked between ships. Fighters danced through the chaos, leaving trails of fire behind them. The battle was unlike anything ever seen before. Alliance ships used every tactic humanity had taught them. They flew in chaotic patterns that seemed insane. They changed formation constantly, never allowing the Prime to predict their movements. They used debris as weapons, ramming it into Prime units. They detonated reactors at close range, sacrificing ships to take out multiple enemies. And the Prime adapted. Of course they adapted. That was what they did. But adaptation took time, seconds, sometimes minutes. And in those precious seconds, Alliance ships exploited the weakness, struck the gap, made the kill. Then they changed tactics again before the Prime could counter. It was brutal. Ships died by the dozens, explosions blooming like terrible flowers in the darkness. Entire squadrons were wiped out in seconds. But for every ship that died, the fleet pushed deeper into the Prime defenses. Meter by meter, death by death, they advanced. Taeyang commanded the ground assault team. When the Indomitable finally broke through to the Nexus surface, he led a team of 50 soldiers into the Prime structure. The interior was like nothing built for organic life. There were no corridors, no rooms, just vast spaces filled with machinery and flowing data. The walls pulsed with light. The air hummed with energy. This was a place built by machines for machines. Prime units attacked them immediately. Not the ships they had fought outside, but smaller units. Infantry-sized machines with weapons designed for close combat. The team fought through them, losing people with every step. Real Nara was there, her silver feathers stained with blood and soot. She fought with a human rifle, using tactics that would have horrified her species' military academies. But those tactics kept her alive. They reached the central core after 40 minutes of constant combat. Of the 50 soldiers who entered, only 12 remained. Dayun was one of them, clutching the virus drive to her chest. The core was a massive sphere of crystallized data, floating in the center of a chamber. Energy crackled around it like artificial lightning. "There," Dayun said, pointing to an interface point. "I need to connect directly to that node. But the energy field will kill anyone who enters it." Taeyang looked at the field, then at Dayun. He saw the knowledge in her eyes. She had known from the beginning. The person who uploaded the virus would not survive. The energy required to maintain the connection would burn through any organic body in seconds. "I will do it," she said simply. "This was always my mission. I built the virus. I know how to deploy it. And I made my peace with this choice months ago." "Dayun," Taeyang started, but she cut him off with a sad smile. "Do not make this harder," she said. "We both knew someone would have to make this sacrifice. Better me than you. You are needed to lead. I am just an engineer who got lucky with a clever idea." She turned to the rest of the team. "When I activate the virus, this structure will start to collapse. You will have approximately 5 minutes to evacuate. Do not waste them." Before anyone could argue, she walked into the energy field. The crackling power enveloped her immediately. Her scream was brief, quickly cut off as the energy overwhelmed her nervous system. But her hands kept moving, driven by training and will. She connected the drive to the interface. She initiated the upload. And she stood there, body burning as the virus flooded into the Prime network. Outside, the battle changed instantly. Prime ships stopped coordinating. Their movements became erratic, uncertain. Units that had worked in perfect synchronization suddenly attacked each other or simply stopped functioning. The unified intelligence was fragmenting, breaking apart into thousands of confused pieces. Hyun-woo saw it happen from his fighter cockpit. The prime ships that had been methodically destroying his squadron suddenly went dark or drifted aimlessly. "The virus is working," he transmitted to all ships. "It is actually working. All units press the attack while they are disorganized." But even as he spoke, he saw a prime destroyer targeting the Indomitable. The ship's engines were damaged and it could not evade. Tae Yang's team was still inside. Without thinking, without hesitating, Hyun-woo made a choice. He aimed his fighter directly at the destroyer and pushed his engines to maximum. "Ghost Leader to Ghost Squadron," he said calmly into his radio. "It has been an honor flying with you. Take care of each other." Then he switched off his radio and thought about all the names on that wall, all the pilots who had died under his command. Soon he would join them. But his death would save hundreds. That was a trade he could accept. His fighter struck the prime destroyer at full speed. The explosion was massive, beautiful in a terrible way. Both ships were destroyed instantly, but the Indomitable was spared. Tae Yang's team had the time they needed to evacuate. Inside the Nexus, alarms were screaming. The structure was tearing itself apart as the virus spread through its systems. Tae Yang grabbed Rilnara and ran, pulling her toward the exit. Behind them, the core exploded in a burst of light and energy. They made it back to their transport with seconds to spare. As they lifted off, Tae Yang looked back at the Nexus. It was collapsing, imploding under its own corrupted systems. And with it, the unified prime intelligence was dying, not destroyed but broken, fragmented into countless independent intelligences, each confused, each vulnerable, each capable of being defeated. The battle ended not with a grand victory, but with exhausted survival. Of the 300 ships that attacked, fewer than 90 remained functional. Thousands of soldiers had died. 2 of the humans Tae Yang had served with for years were gone. Dahyun's sacrifice, Hyun-woo's courage. He would never forget them, but they had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that should have destroyed them, they had won. Not through superior technology or perfect tactics, but through sacrifice and stubborn refusal to surrender. As the fleet limped back toward Alliance space, Tae Yang sat in the quiet of his quarters and allowed himself to cry. For Dahyun, for Hyun-woo, for all the dead, for 12,000 years of endless war, and finally, for the first time in his life, for the hope that maybe, just maybe, that war was finally coming to an end.